What happens when a bunch of nerds contemplate random topics of video games, overanalyze the small details of each and every game, and review games? You get the Gaming Junkies Podcast. Now here's your host, Swiper! Welcome to episode number 5, your review of Hollow Knight. I am your host, Swiper, aka Greg, and joining me for a second time in a row is George. My buddy, how the hell are you, man?
Hey guys, doing well, thank you.
Sweet. So for today's show, we're going to talk about Hollow Knight. But before we get started, I want to give a small disclaimer. We may be going over some stuff that will touch on the game, whether it's lore or certain fights or anything whatsoever. So if you're interested in playing this game and you don't want a single spoiler, please stop the show now and then come back when you're done. I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. So there's your warning. So with all that being said, let's talk about Hollow Knight. And for those who are listening that aren't really familiar with this game, I just want to give some background. So Hollow Knight is described as a 2D action Metrovania video game. This game was developed by a 3-man team who call themselves Team Cherry. So shout out to the indie dev teams. I always love a small group of people coming together and making a kick-ass game like this. And this game was partially funded through Kickstarter, and it raised about $57,000 in 2014. And it eventually released in 2017. And today, people still love this game. And today is the year 2020. So this game is just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's held on. And to this day, it's got I think about 4 expansions, I believe.
Yes,
4 expansions. And if you check out some of the reviews, Game Informer gives it a 9 out of 10. Destructoid gives it a 10 out of 10. And it also received the Best Platformer 2017 when the game released. So I got to be honest with you guys. I usually don't love reviews from like big companies because sometimes I think there's some bias there. Sometimes I think that they may review things unjustly just so the developer comes back and gives them another gives them some information so they can present the game to everybody. But playing through this game, I have to agree with these reviews. Like, I really do. This game was freaking awesome, and there is a lot to unpack when you really look at this game. I mean, I put in about 30 hours, and I only completed about 66% of the game. So for anybody that wants to put their life into a game and only spend about, $15, this is the game for you. George, you're the one that got me into this game. And we were just talking about this before the show, but how many hours would you say you put into this game?
a little tough. My initial run is currently sitting at 120 hours. I have a Steel Soul run that is sitting at 30-ish, and I just did my first speed run the other day, which I completed in like 6 hours. So the game is definitely clearable in under 5, but you need to know where you're going. Most people, unless you're following a guide your first run, I would say you're probably looking at, depending on how much you want to clear, somewhere between a 20 and 50, 60 hour game.
Yeah, I think there's that website, which I didn't actually know about until some people brought it up to me. It was like best beat, like it's like clear time for like all these games. So you could go check out a game and see what like the average clear time is. So you get a pretty good idea of how many hours you're going to get for like the money's worth. And I think this game was like in the 20s, but I would say you'd really have to know where you were going and what you were doing if you're going to make it in 20. Because, like I said, I only did put 30 hours in, and I'm only 66% of the way. So,
I'd say the other thing to think about is there's a good amount of end game content with one of the DLCs called Godhome, and depending on how deep into Godhome you want to go or how difficult you want to make it, that could easily take you, 30 hours or more. Depending on if you want to do the bosses in one hit and you're dead mode or completely bound so that you're basically the starting character going against these bosses.
ooh. Yeah, man. I don't know, man. I get my ass kicked, man.
All of those things net you rewards in Godhome, which is what makes them cool, I guess. Um,
So,
and I guess they offer an additional challenge.
s-
Um,
oh, okay. So like when you say rewards, you mean like how you build your character up, or just money? Like what do you mean by rewards, I guess?
I would say and we're talking about a very specific segment of the game, but I
Yeah.
would say they're kind of personal rewards because at that point in the game you're taking it at a level where the game doesn't necessarily need to go, but it exists if you want to take it there.
Hmm.
Is you're taking the game from a I played this game and it was fun to I want to master all of the bosses in this game, and there's like I forget there's like 47 different bosses in this game.
Damn.
So like if you're looking at complete mastery, you're looking at a difficult time, but it's definitely very rewarding at the end if you're like, yeah, I took 47 bosses and I beat them all without getting hit. It's a pretty good brag.
Oh hell yeah. Hell yeah, dude. All right, so let's kind of get into the content of the show here. One question, or the first question I want to ask you is, how did you find out about this game? Because you actually introduced this game to me. I never even heard of this game, and platformers usually aren't something I play a lot of, but I do really enjoy them. And this game was freaking awesome. And like I said before, all the reviews were awesome. So you got to tell me, how the hell did you find this game?
Well, so I'm a big Metroid is my favorite franchise. So I look around for like Metroid-like games, and this was recommended to me by not only like a friend, but also like I went through the Switch store just randomly, and
Hmm.
I was kind of like, all right, show me stuff that like I think I would like. Show me popular games, and Hollow Knight popped up there. Some other games popped up there, and I was like, all right, let me look at this game. I saw it had some good reviews. I looked at a gameplay video of it, and I was like, I could get into this. This looks sort of like an original Metroid game, except you're with a sword instead of a gun. I could do this, and I watched one of the first boss fights, one of the original ones. I think it was a trailer, and I was like, it looks neat. It looks like a pattern recognition boss fight type thing,
Hmm.
and I'm always big for pattern recognition bosses because I feel like they're very challenging at first until you figure out the pattern, and then you're like, okay, I can crush this boss.
Yeah.
So it's a big. It always feels really good when you take a pattern recognition boss from like, oh my god, I'm getting destroyed to I know what you're going to do now, and I'm going to destroy you. Like that's a awesome feeling for me, and Hollow Knight kind of fits that bill for me.
Yeah, dude, I gotta admit the same exact thing, and this is gonna be a later point that I bring up, but the boss fights are incredible. Like when you face your first boss, and you get your ass kicked, and you get your ass kicked again, and then you get your ass kicked again, and then you finally figure out what you're doing wrong, and you beat it. It's like the best feeling ever. It's this overwhelmingly like happy, joyous feeling, and you get that so much in this game. It's unbelievable. um, but I have to say, when you introduced me to this game, I think there were two games you kind of brought up, and I looked at both games, and this one kind of resonated with me. Really, from I think the art style, like the aesthetics, first got me. There's something about like the darkness and like death or purgatory or whatever you want to call it that really intrigues me, and it makes me want to find out more, like what the hell's going on. Like, is this something I got to break out of? Is this a dream? Is this real? Like, what's going on with this thing? So that's kind of what really drew me, was I think the aesthetics of it. Like, I absolutely loved the way it looked. And then just watching, I did exactly what you kind of did. I watched a little bit of gameplay, and I saw a boss fight. And as soon as I saw the boss fight and this person dying over and over again, I'm like, dude, I got to buy this game. I got to buy this game, man, because it is very hard finding like challenging games that don't necessarily like hold your hand or anything. But, a lot of people know my background. I've played a lot of MMOs, and nowadays a lot of it's they hold your hand. You can't really get lost. So the aesthetics definitely drew me in. As I picked up this game, as I was playing it, I don't know if you're into this, George, but the freaking music is outstanding. Like I jumped through that well, and I got to that first zone, and I just started trancing out and like totally honed in on this game and just kind of playing without realizing what was going on around me. I was just totally focused in the game, and like the music kind of got me into that. It got to a point where I kind of forgot to look at the clock. Kind of like if you ever go to a casino, you ever notice there's never a clock anywhere, and it's because they don't want you to really know what time it is, and you kind of get lost in the moment. And that's exactly what this game did for me. Like, it totally got me lost in the moment. The game feels great to play. Like, it was just awesome. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that got me into the game, I guess before we move off of that, was on top of like the boss fights and everything, just the premise of the game was really interesting to me. Like it kind of introduced you as like a bug
Mm-hmm.
going into like a bug's nest, and I'm like, okay, that sounds like it could be kind of cool. Like you're just like an invading bug going into like a hive. That
Yeah.
sounds kind of terrifying, right? Because you like, if you ever seen like a bee go into like the wrong hive, they get demolished. It's scary. Like it's nature's not nothing to mess with. So like that premise was kind of like, okay, I'm this bug. I go into this town. I jump into this well, which is like the opening of the hive, and then we'll see what happens. And it's kind of like I don't know. You ever watch some nature videos? That's just like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
terrifying. It's like a very scary premise.
Oh, yeah.
So like that was kind of like one of those things where I was like, oh man, this is kind of unique. Like I've never seen really anything like that before. This could be pretty cool. And then you had the boss fights, and then like you were saying, the music score is in the game is really good. Like it's not anything you're gonna listen to probably on like oh man, I have to listen to this on repeat, but it's real good for like transing out and exploring,
Yes.
which is one of the things. Like the boss fights are something to talk about, but the exploration of the map, and especially if you're not using a guide, it's fun. And I would say if like you don't want your hand held, which I think is good. It allows for a lot of like, I'm just gonna kind of like walk around, find stuff. Ooh, I found something over here. Ooh, like there's enough stuff to find on the map to keep you interested.
Oh, yeah. Like, and that's perfect, because when I was playing this game, right, and you step into that first zone, and then you kind of, you don't have a map. Obviously, spoiler, you don't really have a map, nor can you really see yourself on the map unless you go to certain vendors and buy this stuff. So at first, you're just walking kind of in darkness because you don't have a map. Obviously, you can see, you can go left, right, up and down and stuff like that. But eventually, you start kind of making your way, and you start getting to points where you just can't progress. Like, you need a double jump in some areas, or a wall jump, or something that teleports you across the map. Like, there's all these little things that you need, and it forces you to say, okay, like, I have to come back here. And what I love about this is it makes every zone you go to relevant. So that first zone you got through and you mastered and you got the map and you saw everything, you might be going back to it later on in the game, and the second zone and the third zone. So you're never just like, I did this level, it's completely done, I'll never have to see it again. It's one of those, it keeps everything relevant, it keeps you coming back, and it keeps you thinking, I got this new power, where can I use this to get further in this game, because right now I'm stuck. And that can be frustrating, but it also gives you the sense of exploration, which a lot of games sometimes really don't have, because they hold your hand so much and they guide you so much.
Yeah, like I kind of hate when like you're playing any like an RPG or something like that, and you're in a room and you're like, oh man, I forgot to get something back there. Let me go backwards, and you can't.
Yeah.
Right? Like the game says, oh, you can't go back there right now. Like you got to wait until we finish this like event over here. And
Right,
by the
right.
time you're done the event, you're like, what the hell was I doing? I don't even remember anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to go do like some like last quest, and now I can't go back for like 30 hours. This sucks. Like Hollow Knight doesn't do that for you. It doesn't trap you anywhere. It just says, you will need an upgrade. It's in here somewhere. Good luck.
Yeah, figure it out, man. And another thing that I really like about it is, and this is kind of overall like map design and how they developed each one of these zones. There is a travel system in this game, but you have to find it. You have to unlock it. And then not every place has a physical like travel zone. A lot of them do, but not everywhere. And you can't just travel to exactly where you want to go when you want to go somewhere. You have to go to like the spots they put you. So you might have to go to a zone that's absolutely huge, and you could travel to it, but you might have to walk the whole entire zone to even get there. So it might actually be quicker if you really look at the map and say, well, if I just jump down here and go over here, It's a lot quicker than me taking this and going on the other side of it. And that forces you to kind of plan ahead. And the fact that you have to plan ahead, and it makes you think a lot more. It gets you more invested in the game.
It also allows when you have those like future upgrades like double jump or like the burst distance jump. It allows you to kind of when you go back to an area, you go, oh, I have this now, and oh, I can access this over here that I couldn't access before. Ooh, what else can I find?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I remember when I was so I was so poor that anytime I found those catches, those not treasure boxes, but those things you hit a few times
The
to
geo mines. Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, dude, this was awesome. It was usually they're pretty. You can usually see them, but some places you have to double jump or you have to like dash to. So all that stuff really helps, not just to get further in levels, but also kind of reward you a little bit. And I think some of those places you kind of had to do like a little bit of like skill jumping and like avoiding spikes and things like that. So the maps even kind of had some puzzles, which was pretty freaking awesome, especially when you were trying to like skip past the acid and jump past like the spikes and things like that. Like you really had to get creative. You had to like use your sword to bounce off the spikes, to jump onto the wall, to shoot across the like the level, to get on another wall. Like it was crazy, dude. Like I had so much fun doing that.
One of my favorite platforming sections is down in one of the areas called Deep Nest. You actually have to like sword jump on enemies as they're moving across the map. Like you can't
Yes.
actually kill the enemy, but the enemy's just kind of like traveling, and you're like, all right, well, I'm just gonna tink off your shell and bounce over here for a good 30 meters until I get to a platform. And it's like there aren't many games that have you, at least that I know of, that have you do that. Like generally, if an enemy's on the map, you can kill it. Like it's
Yes.
not like, oh, this enemy, you're just gonna use it for travel.
Well, then that's what's kind of confusing when you play this game, because you think, oh well, dude, those are spikes. There's nothing I can do. I'm gonna die from them no matter what I do, because that's what most games do. But this game like allows you to use your sword to bounce off the spike, and it allows you to get like a jump off an enemy that, whether it dies or not, it's there as like a kind of a mechanism for you to progress and for to travel. So it was really weird. Like I remember talking to my other friend about this, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, like did you find out you could use your sword against the spikes?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, like you just jump and then aim your sword down and hit, and you bounce off it." He's like, "Oh my god, dude, that's going to make my life so much easier."
Yeah, one of the initial, I think it's one of the initial caterpillars you're trying to save is like
Yes.
it's on a little platform above, right? And you have to like there's like a platform you can jump to, but later in the game you could just double jump up there. But if
Yeah.
you want to get it early in the game, you got to like whack a spike, get to a platform, and then you got to whack like 3 spike platforms to get to the caterpillar. And like you only have 3 hearts or 3 like hit points at the beginning of the game,
Yeah.
so it's like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this right now. It's kind of scary. But like if you do it, it's like, oh yeah, I felt pretty good about this. And it's just like a basic like, oh, I hit the A button 3 times, aiming downward. Like, but you feel pretty good about like a little challenge like that right in the beginning of the game.
Oh yeah, dude. I got to be honest with you. When I used to play console games like hardcore when I was little, my thumbs and my hands would hurt so much because just pressing the button so hard, even though like pressing it harder sometimes didn't really do anything. It just I don't know what it was, adrenaline or something. This game made me feel that way. Like my thumbs and my they hurt after playing this game sometimes because I was pressing it so hard and I was getting so like angry and then so happy, and like it was just it's like a wave of emotions, man. Like I don't even know how to describe it.
Yep.
So the map, so overall the map design was good. I loved really the music. I think the next part that was kind of deceiving to me when you first look at this game is really the character progression. So this game isn't like you're leveling up or anything. This game is kind of like you kind of jump into it and you start roaming the map, you start discovering things, and you start realizing like, hey, like I got a power to like basically go through things when I dash, or my sword, I can hit enemies from further distance with it, or you have like a magic bolt when you get this certain power, you can make that stronger. So this game deceivingly allows you to really customize your character and really a defensive way, an offensive way, or kind of in between. And the more you unlock and the more you discover in this game, the more you can kind of customize your character and make things a bit easier. I think a great example of this is really picking certain charms. Like you get this ability where you can essentially heal yourself. One of the charms allows you to put a shield on yourself when you're healing. So that's really good for like, oh shit, I'm about to die. I got to try and heal myself and enemies coming at me and it's less, you don't know what to do, and kind of blocks the enemy from you. Like it gives you a lot of choice in a sense. And I think one of my favorite charms of all time is the charm you get from the hive, where it actually regenerates like one of your little health guys. Like that thing saved my ass so many times I don't even know what to tell you about that shit. So what are your thoughts on this, George? Do you think the customization's pretty good for the game? Do you think it could be better?
I am a big fan of the customization for this game, and I don't really know, especially for like your character,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to make it better. Like so your character can cast spells or use its sword, but there are all sorts of other things you can build your character to do. Like you can build your character to kind of spawn minions with certain charms. You
Mm-hmm.
can build your character to have just a ton of health. You can build your character to be a damage, like I'm gonna swing my sword 3 times and you're dead character.
Yeah.
Not on bosses, but on like some other things. And even bosses, they can't take a ton of hits from like a really maxed out sword with a damage increase on it.
Yeah.
Like you can choose how you want to play. Like I don't know how you built yours, but I built my character into a sword character. So gave him all the sword range talents and the extra damage on his sword and a movement speed increase.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was like flying around, like dealing like a ton of damage. Like each swing, I would get like real quick swings off, 3, 4 swings, and the boss would be like, "All right, well I'm getting my one attack." And I'm like, "Okay, dodged. Here's 4 more hits." He's like, "Oh my god, I'm just racking up damage." But like, there's some other people who prefer the magic build route, where you take your spells and you kind of power them up. Um, I can think of at least 5 unique builds through your charms,
Mm-hmm.
these little items you get throughout the game that'll give you certain power ups, but you have to equip them to make them active. I can think
Right.
of 5 unique builds that just do completely different things, and there's maybe 40 charms in the game, something like that. And there's definitely all sorts of other ways to go.
Yeah, I mainly built my guy for the situation. So I usually what I did was I had this issue where I would get too close to the boss and I would hit them and lose health. So I took the item that kind of made your sword longer.
Okay.
And then when I got the charm that actually, so usually when you hit like enemies in this game, you kind of bounce off for the most part. So you take like
Yep.
you hit them and you feel the force it, and that was one of the first things I noticed in this game. I'm like, wow, dude, you really feel the force of hitting an enemy, because a lot of games you just don't move, you just swing, kill them, you keep moving. This game you kind of bounce back a little bit, so you can get a charm that basically says, hey, you're not bouncing back anymore. So that made my life easier. And then I did take the quickness every once in a while, but what I really end up doing a lot was I said, where am I struggling? Because when I would fight a boss, I'd say like, what am I struggling in? And then I'd pick those charms, and then like I would do it. I'd be like, all right, no, I don't need this one. I'll pick this one. And the last one I really used a lot was the one which made you invulnerable a little bit longer. So when you got hit, you would be invulnerable just a little bit longer. So you had a little bit more time to react. So those were kind of the main ones I used. I didn't really do too much with the magical stuff because in that game I felt like melee was always a little bit stronger. But again, I didn't use it, so I'm not a good. I can't compare it really all that well.
There are certain bosses where magic definitely works better. It depends on For me, it depends on whether the boss gets knocked back or not. Some of the bosses will get knocked back from hits you do, some of the
Yeah.
bosses won't. The bosses who don't get knocked back take like full damage most of the time from like a spell, and spells can do a lot of
Oh,
damage. Uh, but they got to take all
Interesting.
the hits from them. If they're only taking like 2 or 3 hits from like a 8-hit spell, it's not going to be quite as powerful.
That's interesting. See, I didn't even know that. Oh man. So there's just so much in this game that it's just unbelievable. Like there's so much I don't know about this game. And this is kind of what I want to talk about next is like the boss fights and how freaking amazing they were because selecting all these charms and trying to go into a boss fight and just trying to defeat this son of a bitch, man, like it'll drive you crazy. Like I spent nights like literally 40 minutes trying to beat a boss sometimes. And I was like, I gotta take a break. Like I need 5 minutes. And I'd think about it and then I'd come back and eventually I would beat it. But that's how awesome these bosses are. And if you look at reviews, some people say they compare this game to Dark Souls. Now, I don't know if you played Dark Souls, George.
I have not, but I've had a bunch of friends who have, and I know the genre very well.
Yeah, so I played Dark Souls for a little bit. Now, I wouldn't directly compare it to say it's like Dark Souls, but the idea is like Dark Souls, where you go to a boss fight and it can be extremely difficult, and you have to learn the pattern, and it is frustrating as hell, and it's just not like super easy off the bat. Um, but basically, I kind of want to touch on a point that you made earlier, George, is when you start running into these bosses and you get your ass kicked and you learn that pattern and you kick their ass, it feels like, wow, why did I struggle on this guy for 15, 20 minutes? I absolutely obliterated this guy. Like once you get the pattern down, and that's saying as long as you can execute it as well. You have to get the pattern and also execute it. But to me, what I really liked about these boss fights, were some were extremely difficult, some were pretty easy, but it really forced me as a player, like as myself, to look at my charms and my build and say, all right, I can get rid of that like compass charm and give myself an extra slot to put something else in there. And then it kind of forced me to learn where the boss was and then kind of where I was, because without that compass, that little thing that tells you where exactly you are on the map, I got lost so easily. So it essentially forced me to make a build that helped me with the boss. And then I kind of learned a new charm, and then I would take it off and put something else on. And that is one thing I love about any video game out there. A game that forces you to think about how your character reacts versus something difficult versus a boss. Anything that forces me to think and say, like, what can I do to beat this guy? Like it's something that I get addicted to very easily. So,
I
um,
have
but
I
go
have
ahead.
the opposite problem. I go into a boss fight and I go, it doesn't really matter what the game is, unless it's an RPG. Like in an RPG, you can go into a boss fight and be underleveled, and the boss is just impossible.
Yeah.
But in like a game like this where it's pattern recognition, you could go in, no power ups, base level everything, and if you know the pattern well enough, you should still win. But when you don't know the pattern, like it gets pretty hard. Like you gotta learn it, and you gotta like, oh man, is this guy gonna jump now, or is he gonna dash at me, or is he
Mhm.
gonna like throw some crap at me across the map? How do I dodge it? Like all of those type of things like mean something in these boss fights. And like I've seen a lot of people go, oh man, this boss is really hard. I'm like, what are you talking about? He'll jump over you if you do this, and if you
Yes.
stay on the ground, he'll like just stay over there and shoot stuff at you, and you can just kind of walk up to him and whack him a couple times. Like on almost all of these bosses, I kind of know their patterns. I've also done all of them on Radiant, which is the one hit and you die mode. So like I've got them all like memorized up in my brain. Like that, I've enjoyed the game so much. I was like, I'm gonna do this challenge.
That's also another feature, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the end game contents, that God Home content I was talking about, allows you to solo one on one versus the boss for practice, essentially. Um, the Because the last challenge of God Home is a boss rush of all of the bosses in the game
Mm,
stacked one on top of each other.
man, dude. There's no way. There's no way.
Well, you heal, and there's some stuff every about 5. It's definitely doable,
Yeah.
especially if you build right and you know the bosses well enough. But it allows you to say, "Oh man, I was trying to do this challenge, and this one boss keeps messing me up." Well, I mean, that means you don't know the pattern well enough. So you go in there and you fight him a couple times, and hopefully you learn the pattern well enough to take him out. But they're all different, and some of them are fast. So like if you don't recognize what he's doing immediately, you're getting hit.
You're getting hit. Oh yeah, I think the one boss that was pretty quick on me was the trader lord.
Trader
Um,
King. Yep.
I actually figured out a pattern that worked for me after maybe dying like 25 times, like no lie. Because I couldn't distinguish between if he was going to charge or if he was going to jump in the air and dart down. And a lot of bosses before that had like a tell, or you could just tell, like they'd either jump back and then move forward, or they would stand still and then do something. So you kind of knew after fighting them a few times. But this one, the Trader Lord, just him, the False Knight, and the Soulmaster, I would say were the 3 hardest fights for me. Like the
Okay.
Soulmaster is a guy that just teleports all around and does the same. But once you see his patterns, you kind of know what he's doing, and then it's just executing and avoiding. And the False Knight, he was the guy I felt like you had to basically stand on top of him. Because if you didn't, then I'm trying to remember, like his big swing with his hammer was so devastating. It was really hard to avoid. That I remember if you stood right next to him, he wouldn't do that hammer move, and you could get him like a ton of times, and he would jump, and you could go underneath him, and then it was awesome, but it took me forever to learn
That
these
that's
things.
that's the key to the false knight fight is when you're next to him, he'll either jump like try to land on you,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just kind of like walk to where he was, and then just start smacking him from behind
Yes,
again,
yes,
and he'll be like, "Wait, he's behind me. I gotta jump to him again." You just keep that pattern up. But if he does anything else, he'll just like pull his hammer real far back, and he'll get ready to smash you with it. And you're like, "Okay, you're not jumping right now. Let me walk away from you for a minute."
yeah. So those are, and dude. So let's talk about this a little bit. How many boss fights, including the expansions, would you say there are, like unique boss fights? Because I know some of the bosses you can kind of redo, at like harder modes. Um, but did you say like around like 40 or something?
So there's 47 bosses in the game. 12, I think, of those are more difficult versions of original bosses you fight.
Okay, and I know some of the bosses like earlier on, which I did, which were the harder. I think they were the harder ones. You got that like soul essence, or I'm forgetting what essence that was to
Yeah, it's
upgrade your
your
one
dream
sword.
nail.
Yeah, your dream nail. That's it. Um, and that was pretty cool because you got to fight like a harder version of them.
Yeah, so like one of the things in the game is all of these bosses wanted something, especially the ones that have harder forms.
Hmm.
They all wanted something, uh, and they all dreamed that they would be able to complete something. Um, so, for instance, the failed champion is like the first boss you fight. His dream was to be strong. So in when you go fight him in his dream form, his stronger form, he's strong.
Yeah.
He's very strong. Um, and there are a bunch of other bosses that have dream forms as well.
Hmm.
Um, they all wanted something, and in their dreams, they are that something they wanted.
Yeah, I sort of remember that because when you beat them, then they kind of talk to you about like their hopes and dreams, I guess you could say.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I did something good. Like, it's pretty awesome. But dude, I gotta say that by far the boss fights are hands down probably my favorite part of this game. Um, there's a lot of little things that I kind of spoke about, and there are a lot of other things that I didn't bring up that are really awesome in this game. So, before we move on, George, is there anything that you want to talk about, or anything else that I didn't really cover that you think would be important for somebody to know about this game?
Uh, I think one of the big things, and we talked a lot about the boss fights and the exploration, but I think one of the big things is there's there's a definite story there. But you have to actually, so one of the things with games nowadays is that the story is really laid out for you. You
Mm-hmm.
don't really have to piece anything together, right? It's we're going here to defeat this guy because he's bad, or we're going over here to do this thing because we have to do it to affect the other thing. But it's very spelled out for you.
Yes.
Hollow Knight does not do that unless you are really paying attention. So in my first playthrough during the game, I got to the end of the game, I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like what happened? What happened?
Hands down, that
Like
was me, man. That was me. That was
I did some stuff over here. I talked to this lady. Why am I fighting this thing? Like, I don't get it. Uh, and it was because like when I was reading like the game text, I wasn't actually reading it. I was just kind of like, okay, okay, okay. I just want to beat something up. I didn't realize like how much this game was going to be like. Okay, well you're going to have to put the story together if you want to figure it out. And that's kind of how there's multiple endings to the game. That's kind of how the endings are designed. The first ending, the worst ending, is you didn't really want to figure stuff out, so this is what happened.
hmm
The second ending is you figured out some stuff, but you didn't figure out enough of it, so this is what happened. And then the third ending is, well, you actually figured everything out, and you made the situation better.
And
Uh,
that's a fantastic point. Is there's 3 endings to this game, right?
there's
3.
technically 5, but 2 of them are DLC and just kind of alternate endings. There's 3 main endings to the game.
Well, there you go. There's even more than 3. So so depending on what you're doing, like it's you said it perfectly. I think you said it absolutely perfectly. But anyway, I'm sorry. You finished your thought. I just wanted to make that point.
I mean, that's kind of it. Like it really depends on how much you want to dive into the game. The more you dive into the game, the more you'll get out of it. With the endings especially, and then even with the NPCs, because like when you get to the very first town, there's like one NPC in the town,
Yes.
and as you explore, you'll find other ones, or you won't because you won't find them. And they, throughout the game, those NPCs may or may not help you on the quest, or you can talk to them in different areas throughout the game because they'll move around. So it's kind of neat being like, hey, I talked to you in the main town. Why are you all the way over here? What are you doing? He'll be like, oh, I'm doing this thing.
Yeah, like that's one thing I distinctly remember. Some of the boss fights that you do, you all of a sudden you'll kind of see people that you've run into. And they'll actually help you in some of these fights, and you're just, whoa, what the fuck, man? Like, where did you come from? Like, this is awesome. Like the one boss, like with all those like, was it like the jellyfish looking creatures and things like
Yep.
that?
That's the main one in the game that people will find because that one's mandatory.
Okay.
But there's like 1 or 2 other bosses in the game that you'll actually get help with if you do the prerequisites.
Yeah, and like that's what's freaking awesome about this game too. Like, when I played this game, I was just kind of playing through it and just trying to follow what I was doing, and I was actually really enjoying myself. And like I said, I put 30 some hours in this game, but then I was like, wow, I really didn't experience a lot of this game. I really didn't.
And that was with a little bit of help.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I did my best not to look up guides or anything. I think I did cheat like twice. There were 2 times where I was like, what the fuck do I do? And then it was like, oh, you need to have this power to do this. And I'm like, oh my God. I think it was like the shade power where
Yep.
you could use it to go through those like those black looking void things that you couldn't go over. You couldn't get past unless you had that power. So
So those black looking void things, you don't actually have to go past to finish the game.
get out of here.
But you
Oh,
don't have to. Nope.
man.
Are you talking about the one in Fog Canyon?
Well, there's like 2 or 3 of them, right?
There's one particular one that usually
And
trips. There's a couple of them, but there's one particular one on the way to one of the mandatory uh, guys you have to kill to unlock the final boss. That most people are like, how do I get through this black gate? I don't get it. You can actually get into the area a different way, but you
oh,
need the acid repelling upgrade.
okay. See, like, oh man, so that's what's crazy too. So there's not just like one path the whole way through, which is awesome as well. It's this game is so open. it's unbelievable. It's almost mind-boggling how open this game is and what you can do and what it's just crazy. It's awesome. Like I just, it is really a really good game. Like I've really enjoyed it. So I guess the next couple things I want to talk about, and these things are kind of hard for me to talk about because with this game only being like $15, at least when I got it, I think when I was even reading a little bit more about the history about this game, even when this game first came out, they were only selling it for I think like $15 or something like that. I could be totally wrong, but I know it was very low. And it was kind of weird for a lot of people because when you really play this game, I kind of feel like they're cheating themselves for $15. I really do. And there's always a question of like, how can a game be better? Like, how can we improve this game? And honestly, when you think about it, for $15, I mean, you get a pretty damn good deal. You really do. And I would think with all the upgrades that they give you, you got to look at the upgrades and you got to think about this. If they start adding more upgrades or doing more things to improve the game or something, it might make the map a little bit easier to get around when maybe they don't want. I mean, those are kind of my thoughts. So when I really nitpick this game, for as much as I played it, I really don't know what they could potentially improve. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, George?
I actually would not really want to improve very much in this game myself. This is probably, I've played a ton of games in my time, and I would say Hollow Knight's easily in my top 5. Like, generally, if you're in a top 5 game from someone who's played, God, have I played 1,000 video games in my life? Probably. It's up there, and there isn't really too much to improve on it. There's a ton of things to do. I would say when you add endgame content that says, "Hey, here's a boss rush," if you want to do it, it's not part of the mandatory game. That always makes a game better.
Yes.
And it just had all that stuff. So I don't really know, other than like maybe adding a couple areas on the side, like for more, I don't know, exploration.
It's
I kind
tough,
of think
isn't it?
it's good. It's good as it is, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know what really could be improved. Like, even if this game was, let's say, double the price or something, and I know maybe you shouldn't judge a game off the price, like, but price definitely comes into the value you're getting for your money in the grand scheme of things. You know, if you spend $60 on a game and you kind of thought it was trash and it didn't really have a whole lot, and then you spend $15 on a game that just destroyed. Dude, I played that game too, man. I was not a big fan of that game, but
I like combat. I don't like having to design my character from the ground up for hours.
yeah, it's a grind
Was
fest.
what Monster Hunter felt to me.
Yeah,
And I know other people have loved the game and have other opinions on it. I like combat, and that's what Hollow Knight gives you. If you want menus, you can do the menu option, like Greg said, with the charms and whatnot.
Yeah.
But most of those fights are gonna boil down to whether you know the patterns or not.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like some of the charms will give you maybe a little bit of what's the word?
Survivability.
Yes, yeah, perfect. Gives you a little bit of survivability. Lets you kind of stay in the fight a little bit longer when you're making mistakes. But they're not gonna turn a fight to a sense of, oh, I don't have to learn the pattern. I'm gonna win because of these, because I'm so overpowered.
Yeah, you can only make mistakes for so long.
Yes, yeah. So it might add like a half mistake or an extra like mistake and a half or something like that, but that's about it. Which is awesome as well. So I guess the last question I want to especially ask you, George, because I played a lot of platformers when I was little. Like my favorite games, I know it sounds silly, but like Mario and like Mega Man. Those were like my favorite games. Like Mega Man, really, I just loved Mega Man. And when I kind of compared this game to some of those games I played before, it sort of reminds me Mega Man, sort of, because in Mega Man you kind of you pick a level, you go through the level, you beat a boss, and you get that power from the boss, and then you can use that power to kind of beat other bosses because they might have that weakness towards that boss. And Mega Man sort of has like those not necessarily jumping puzzles, but sometimes they have things where you have to use your powers to get through levels, and I gotta say it's nowhere near as good as this game. This game was definitely a lot more open. It gave you a lot more freedom. It wasn't, do this level and you're done. It was do this level and make sure you're gonna have to come back to it because there's something else you missed. Trying to think of what else. Really, I just honestly, I mean, compared to other platformer games, how do you compare this to some of them, George?
I would say this is comparable to, for those who like Metroidvania games. It's very comparable to Super Metroid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like Super Metroid had the same kind of features. The map was pretty open. Certain areas would unlock when you got certain upgrades. There are walls that could be destroyed to open up other areas that aren't necessarily like indicated. Like you'll have to shoot them or you'll have to hit them with your sword in Hollow Knight to open up other areas. You kind of like whack your sword, they make a sound. You're like, wait, that's not a normal wall sound. Whack it a couple more times, and some bonus area will open. You're like, oh, let's explore over here. And that's constantly happening, like in Hollow Knight when you're exploring.
Yes.
So it's really neat, and it kind of adds that, especially when you're not using a guide, adds that satisfaction of, oh, there's something new over here. All right, let's go over in this area. And uh, that's definitely the genre of game it is in. But being compared with Super Metroid, which probably is one of the best Metroidvania games out there, or like a Castlevania game, is a really what's the word? Really high praise, I guess, for a game, especially designed by a 3-person team. Like you imagine like design and having 3 people design a game and then saying, this game was almost as good as Super Metroid. Like what?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
No, dude. And I think like everything that you're seeing visually, I think they hand drew all that.
Oh, I'm not sure, but maybe it's possible.
I think I read, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they said that all the graphics were hand drawn. So I'm like, holy crap! Like, so they weren't just taking crap in a like Unity like designer or something and saying, okay, I'm going to use this asset for here. Like, I believe they did all the drawing themselves and then they imported everything. I'm not sure how you freaking do that. I have no idea.
That's super impressive.
Isn't that crazy though? Like, and I think that's why this game, the aesthetics are so. I think they're really unique. I think they're really different and they're really out there. And maybe that's me coming from a place where I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of these types of games, but like I said, it got me into this game for sure.
I would say the other thing that is really enjoyable is the movement is precise.
Yes.
Like if you've ever played like a game with like you played a Mario game and you played Luigi and he's like sliding all over the place, or like you're playing in another third party game and your character doesn't like stop when you want it to.
Yes.
It's infuriating. It's like I didn't want to do that, but now I'm over here and I'm getting hit and crap's happening and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Everything in this game is built to be responsive. Like especially like are you choosing to hit this enemy right now? Like, are you sure you're going to land on that platform if you hit this enemy and bounce backward? Like, those are things you have to think about.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh no, I was just going to say that's actually one point I wanted to bring up that I didn't is the response. Like, so I use a controller, and I'm pretty sure you did since you had it for the Switch, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that you can use a keyboard mouse in this game, but I got this on Steam. So, and I use a controller for any kinds of like types of these games. And I got to be honest with you, man, like if this game did not have like, if it didn't cater to how well you could use a controller with it, with how well it felt with movement and when you swing your sword and all those things, you would be 10 times more frustrating because honestly, sometimes when you're in a boss fight and you're jumping and you're porting through somebody or dashing through something, like that's got to be spot on. And then when you're jumping and you have to move just like half an inch, like a little centimeter just to avoid, but just so you can hit them so they don't hit you with something else, like everything like matters. And it's insane how, like you said, like when you play games like Mario and you're like Luigi and you have to like kind of learn, okay, he's going to slide and like I have to account for that sliding and it's just a pain in the ass. And you don't get that in this game.
Yeah, it's definitely like with how tight some of the boss fights are, like having to fiddle with like oh, my character's kind of doing things I don't want, that would take this game from like a it's really really great to oh, it's awful.
Yeah, they
Like
really would.
these boss fights are frustrating because like my character doesn't do what I want. And that's just not how it is. The knight in this game, your main character, is built in a way where he's very responsive to what you do,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right.
and he will punish you if you, like the main thing is like early in the show you talked about a charm that allows you to hit a guy without bouncing back.
Yes.
If you don't have that charm equipped and you're like trying to jump from platform to platform while you're swinging a sword at something in the air, like you'll get bounced back and it might mess up your platforming section.
Oh
But
yeah.
that will be your fault if you don't have the one charm equipped. Like those are all things you have to think about that make like even simple interactions like okay, I'm gonna jump through this guy's like orange bubbles that I need to like hit him. Oh, I hit him and now I'm not gonna land on that platform. No, this is bad. Panic dash over here, try to get to the platform. Oh, I'm on the side of it, jump off of it, and get
So
my jumps back, and like all of that stuff kind of leads you into like a miniature panic mode. Even if you're fighting just like a normal little enemy while going through like a small platforming
oh
area,
yeah.
sometimes it's like all of a sudden it goes from like I'm just like cruising through this boring little area to hold on a second, I gotta pay attention.
So now that we're talking about this, there's two things I want to bring up. First, when it comes to what we were just talking about, there is a specific zone that I don't want to give too much away that is purely think of heaven and then think of a bunch of like saws that like cut wood or cut anything possible and put those two things together and you get this zone. And this zone is all about avoiding spikes and saws that either are stationary or they move, and you have to use basically everything that you've learned in this zone just to get to a certain point, which I think you're forced to get to. So
Only if you want the true ending.
okay, so well, don't you need to get to that point to go down to the abyss? And I don't want to spoil anything, but don't you?
You need it to get one of the upgrades in the game is called the Void Heart. You do need that to get the Void Heart.
Yes.
The Void Heart is what unlocks the true ending. You can still get the second ending with the Void Heart if you don't do something specific on the final boss fight.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here to check me and correct me when I'm wrong. So I thought that was like mandatory, but that was a zone that I remember I had to take 3 different play sessions to do, and also had to switch up my charms because I wasn't using a specific charm that kind of kept me alive through the whole zone. So if you like jumping puzzles and avoiding things and basically sweating your brains away, that you're gonna love that zone.
Precision movement is what I'll call that zone.
Yeah.
That zone requires you to have very, very precise movement. And the first time you go through it, you're going to get so frustrated.
Oh, yeah.
But once you do finally get through it, you're going to be like, yeah, this is
hell yeah.
like, I got through this like really hard section. And then you'll go back and then you'll learn that the path of pain exists. And you'll be like, what? There's a harder section in there? And,
I have to do that section.
no, you got to go back into that section and unlock the path of. Look it up, the path of pain.
I will look it up because I got to be honest with you, I would have no idea where to start to get that. So, okay. And the last thing I want to talk about is death. So when you die in this game, you get sent back to, I think it's where you sat last, right? Where you sat and saved, I think, right?
The last bench. Yep.
The last bench. So this kind of goes into the whole traveling aspect. But anyway, when you die, you basically go back and you have essentially, you get your health back, you lose your gold, and your resource that you fill up is basically it's chopped in half. Now you have an opportunity to go and get your soul, and as long as you kill your soul and you get it, you get your money back, and then your resource gets kind of filled up like unbroken. But what I realized is that if you die again, that soul like doesn't carry over to your other soul, so you lose all your money.
Yep.
So that was a big downer because I remember I had like 2,000 some, and I was like, yeah, dude, I died, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll go get my body, and then I died again. I'm like, yeah, that's all right. I'll get my no. It's like, shit, dude, I have no more money. Oh, dude, I was so bummed. And that is one thing I love about death in this game. It's not so excruciating where it says, okay, what everything you did, we're just wiping your whole entire progress and you're fucked. Like, it's saying, here, we're giving you an opportunity to like get your gold back and stuff, but if you mess up, like you lose your gold. And I think death is something that's very hard to balance in games. I think it can make or break a game. I really do. I think death can make games too easy. I think they can make them too hard. And I think they kind of hit the nail on the head with death in this game.
Yeah, I remember my first time I died in the game and I didn't get my soul back, and I had a good amount of money on me, and I was like, no, I was saving up to buy this thing over here that's a bunch of money. Now I got to get all that money. Like, oh my god, why? And it kind of points to one of the things that I think most games don't do well that this game does is the money system in this game is actually pretty good.
Yes.
Like most enemies will get drop like 3 or 4 gold pieces or geo this game is called.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll beat up plenty of enemies as you go through like the travel and whatnot, and you'll accumulate gold. But buying stuff, like especially like the necessary upgrades, like I think the first major upgrade you need to buy is like a lantern. And it
Yes.
costs almost 2,000 geo
Oh, yeah.
to buy. And by the time and as you're going through the game, you're like, oh man, I want to unlock this bench. It's 50 geo. I want to unlock this travel station. It's 100 geo. Oh, I want to buy the map over here. It's another 100
Mm-hmm.
geo. Like you're unlocking little things, so your money's going up and down, and it's fine. And then you realize, oh, I need a light, and you've been buying stuff throughout the game. You're like, oh, I have 500. This is enough. You go to the shop and it's like 2,000. You're like, oh
Yes.
man, what? Now I gotta go grind for some money over here, or I can't get this right now. Let me go explore somewhere else. Like those are all like very interesting things, and like the prices on things in like if you ever played like a Zelda game, it's like,
Yeah.
ah man, I'm gonna buy this thing over here for 50 rupees, and you go
Right.
out into like the field and you get 50 rupees like immediately,
Yeah,
and
you
it's
can
just
grind
like,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, what was the point? In this game, like you have to choose what you want. Most of the time while you're traveling, you want those like random things throughout the map, but you're not always, if you find like a shop in the middle of the map, you're not always able to buy everything.
Yes.
So that requires you to like revisit later if you want to grab this particular charm that you couldn't get earlier because you didn't have enough money, and it stacks on the number of things that you're like, oh, I have to remember to go back here later to get this thing.
Oh, yeah. I actually, gosh, so this is bringing up another point. So I swear to God, man, I'm pretty sure you and I can talk about this for hours, but I'll have one more point, and then maybe if you have something that comes off this, we can keep talking. But there was a side quest, and when I'm talking side quests, I'm not talking like, oh, there's an exclamation point over somebody's head and you go talk to them, or they're like waving at you saying, hey, come talk to me. Like, no, you gotta like go find these people and talk to them. And you can easily walk past them. But I remember the one side quest, and I'm sure you did this one, George, and I tried to, but then I had to give up because I was like, I'm not making any progress. Like, I gotta get through this game.
He's gonna talk about the Gray Mourner.
This is the one, I don't remember the name. I'm terrible with names. This is the one where they say, hey, here's like this flower. I need you to bring
Yup.
this. I need
Yup.
you to bring this to this grave. And you can't take any kind of travel, right? And there's something else. You can't take any kind of travel system, I think, and you can't die or something like that, right?
You can't get hit.
You can't get hit. That's it too. So I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. I picked the flower up and I looked at the map. I'm like, holy shit, dude.
I got a long way to go.
I gotta fucking run from this side of the map to the other side. Like, what? So I'm like, you know what? I need the money. I need money. I'm gonna try this. So I skip the tram because I had the tram and I'm going through the zones and I get halfway and I get hit. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this again. Like, I just, no.
Yeah, the first time I did that quest, I got hit like 5 feet outside of the dude's house, and I was like, "Oh, this is crappy." And so I went back, I got it, I got out of the first area, I went across this like lake thing, and I was like, "I'm feeling pretty good." I get into like the main area, which now has changed a little bit,
Yes.
and I get hit by something, and I'm like, "Wait, I was like halfway across the map." I got hit by something. I go back, right, and I get the flower again. I come back, I get hit by the same area. I'm like, this sucks. I hate this challenge. And then I realized that when I was traveling across the map, I was not encountering the enemies that I had killed. So I just went to the destination and I killed everything along the path
Oh,
to the Gray
okay.
Mourner.
Yeah.
Grabbed the flower, and I did not sit at a bench because what I figured out after I did this a couple times is when I sat on a bench, it respawned all the enemies.
Yeah, okay, okay, cool. Like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
So I cleared out the whole path. Then I went back. I got the flower, and I started going along the path, and it was like nothing was in my way for like 75% of the run, except for
Uh,
like some like little junks that I wasn't really too concerned about. But like if you don't do that, it's kind of annoying.
oh yeah, I'll say. Like, as soon as you're like, you can't travel, I'm like, I guess that means I can't use a tram. I guess that means I can't use like the bug that carries you. I'm like, maybe I can do this, and I'm like, no. It's like I just keep moving on, man. Like, and I'm sure and I'm not sure, George. Is there more things kind of like that? Like, I don't know if they're side quests or challenges. But I
That's
don't.
probably the hardest side quest in the game.
Okay, okay.
Other than some of that end game content that like says, oh, go through all of the bosses like without any upgrades, like that's annoying, but that's not actually that doesn't give you any upgrades other than like, hey, you did it. Um,
Yes.
that's the only other than maybe like one of the DLCs adds like a long kind of side quest that's not necessary for completing the game with a character called Grim. Um, that's probably the most annoying one. The Grim one can be fun because it gives you 2 or 3 boss fights.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, so do you have any kind of last thoughts? Anything that we didn't really cover that you kind of want to bring up or just make everybody aware of about the game?
Uh, it's a great game. Go buy it. I think you can find it on sale for $10 sometimes on the store
Yeah.
or on Steam. It's honestly, it's like throwaway money for the amount of value you can get out of it.
Yeah, I can only agree with that sentiment. And I think so. You got it for the Switch. I have it for Steam. I think at one point it may not be if you have an Xbox. It was on Xbox Live. My one buddy told me. That's how he got it. A lot of my other friends just got it on Steam because they have so many games on Steam. And usually they're pretty good price. But this game is totally worth it. So if you want to play a new game and you don't want to drop 60 or even $30 on a game, pick this game up. It's awesome. And if you do play it, make sure you comment and let us know what you thought of it. Any questions you might have or anything whatsoever. I do have a website out now. I am making some changes to it, but for the most part, if you want to submit a question or kind of jump in and kind of play the same game that George and I and some of my other buddies might be playing, I think we're going to try and play like a game every month, and then try and talk about it depending on our schedules and how everything goes. But you can definitely visit us at GamingJunkiesPodcast.com. And George, if there's any kind of plugs you want to give out, now's your shot. If not, I can kind of throw it in the comments.
Nothing particular for me. If you're ever in the Phoenixville area of PA and coronavirus has ended, feel free to stop by Gamers Heaven and on Sundays and check out our all charged up Smash events. But other than that,
All right, sweet. That's awesome. So yeah, definitely check that out. Check out the website. And everybody that's listening, we appreciate you guys listening. And if you want to support us in any way, honestly, just throw a question out there, throw a review out there, give us 5 stars or whatever, and tell us what you think about the show. It is a huge help. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, George, for joining again. I appreciate it, man. Always a good time.
thanks everyone for listening.
All right, see you later, everybody. Peace out. Thank you for listening to the Gaming Junkies Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, think about subscribing. And if you'd like to support us, give us a rating on Apple Podcast or leave a comment at GamingJunkiesPodcast.com. See you next time.